Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Ma'aser Sheni Perek Hey Halacha Aleph. Today's daf is daf Mem Vav, but we left off on daf Mem Hey Amid Beis at the beginning of the Gemara, right in the top half of the Amid. So in the Mishnah, we have a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanakama holds that whoever owns a kedem that has currently in it product of revoi. Similarly, whoever has a field that currently has in it product that's arla should mark their field as the Mishnah described. Each one has a different type of marker. And why would that be? So someone else who apparently will be a ganef, and he might help himself with the produce of this field, should know that Zajac Geneva is one thing, but it's also a revoi. It's also arla. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, I disagree with that. That yes, I agree with the concept that you have to mark a field, but that's only during the Shemitah year, during the Shvi'is year. Everyone has the right to take, because everything is considered hefker. Yes, you have to make such markers, but during the other 6 years of the Shvi'is cycle, I am not obligated to be preoccupied with the consequences that the ganef will have to bear for the choice that he's making, for the bad choice that he's making. That is the machlokes that we began in the Mishnah. So we're going to begin in the Gemara. First of all, it will be as a maimer hamuzgar. And yes, we did mention it yesterday that when it comes to all of the dinim of revoi, sometimes the nusach of the Mishnah is neta revoi. Neta means plantations that are in their halachic fourth year. Kedem is more limited. And in halacha l'maisa, as we mentioned, that we have these three opinions. The Rabbeinu Yoina, who holds that the revoi is noig in chutz la'aretz, equal to Eretz Yisrael, like Orla. L'kula alma Orla noig bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz la'aretz. The Rambam on the other side of the Rabbeinu Yoina holds that the revoi is only in Eretz Yisrael. The Go'oinim hold, it depends. Kerem revoi is noig afilu b'chutz la'aretz. Something special about Kerem. Neta revoi is only noig ba'aretz. This is the end of it. The beginning of it were the Tanoim and the Amoraim wondering, what is the Nusach, Kerem Revoi or Neta Revoi? Now, the way our Perek is compiled, we're going to have many Mishnayos that will be speaking about the laws of Revoi. In the first three, the Nusach of the Mishnah is, as is the name of this chapter, Kerem Revoi. And Mitamal, Rabbi is going to go into Neta Revoi. Kerem Revoi, Neta Revoi. Now, what we will see from today's daf is that there was a Tana called Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba, the great Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi consulted with him when Rabbi compiled the Mishnah according to the Gemara to get the right nusach. Whenever Rabbi had a doubt what the proper exact text is, Rabbi Yitzchak was the master. In addition, the Pnei Moshe, wherever he gets it from, also says that whenever Rabbi had a doubt how to make the Seder, what should come before what, Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba was a foundational Tana when it came to the compilation of the Mishnah, as we will see in the Gemara. But coming back to the content of this machlokes, the Gemara is going to bring a Mishnah in the Mai. The Mishnah in the Mai is speaking about a guest in an inn. The guest is a chaver. The innkeeper is an Amaretz. The guest came with dough. The guest is going to give the dough to the innkeeper for the innkeeper to bake it. And what is the concern? The question is whether the chaver, the guest, is obligated prior to giving the dough to the innkeeper to tithe it. First of all, it should have been tithed already. But the issue there is that maybe the innkeeper is going to steal some of the dough and maybe exchange your dough with my dough. And therefore, he's going to have the consequences, if the dough is not yet tithed, of eating untithed food. So we can have a machlokes there between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yosi. The Gemara is going to suggest that l'chayda it's the same concept that we have over here in Masechtas Ma'aser Sheni, whether someone should be concerned with the consequences that a ganef is going to have to bear because of his or her bad choice of stealing, without knowing that in addition there's another problem. Am I obligated to be concerned for that or not? The Gemara is going to say that it could be correlated. Then the Gemara is going to say that it's not correlated. That will be a big part of today's daf. And the second part, the big topic of today, will be regarding the third item that the Mishnah says that one should be mitzayin, one should mark, and that is kavaros. And the Gemara is going to ask, minayin, where do we see from the Torah that you should mark the graves? And we had a similar sugya in the Bavli. It's a fascinating sugya. We're going to have psukim both from the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. We're going to have psukim from Nach. And the bottom line is that, yes, that Minig Yisrael is that when a person is interred, we mark the graves. The Mishnah speaks about marking the graves with sid, with white lime. Now we mark it with stones. Forever they used to put stones. It's not a new thing. They used to put the lime on the stone, and we're going to see certain details about how the stones must be affixed in the ground, as we will see in today's daf. So daf mem hey amid beis, all the way in the beginning of the Gemara. The opening line of the Mishnah is kerem revoi. As I mentioned, if you're going to keep on learning the Mishnayos of this 5th chapter, all of a sudden the nusach of the Mishnah will go from kerem revoi to neta revoi. Kerem is only a vineyard. Neta includes everything. Okay. Now, whether it is Zuna, whether he was in the first generation of Amoraim, whether he was a Tana, Zuga can also be a shame, Tana, or Zuga could mean a group of Talmidim, whichever one. So either it's Zuna or Zuga, the name of someone, or Zuga is the Chevre, right? A pair of Talmidim, Sha'al Rebbe, they asked Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Man Nitnei, what is the accurate text of the Mishnah? Is it Kerem Revoi? Is it Neta Revoi? Explaining their question. They had what we have. They had Kerem Revoi, but when they kept on reading Perek Chamishi, Rebbe all of a sudden says Neta Revoi. So basically they asked them, make up your mind. Either always say Kerem Revoi or always say Neta Revoi. So Amaloi and Rabbi told him, you want to know the Nusach? Pekoin, go out. Sha'alun Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba. Why is that? The Bochanes le kol masniyasa, because I examined all of the Mishnayos with him. The pshat has to be that when every Rebbe had a doubt, what is the accurate Nusach? Rebbe compiled the Mishnahs. The Mishnayos come from Moshe Rabbeinu. He asked Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba. In addition to finding out the Nusach, again, the Pnei Moshe, around 10 lines from the bottom, in middle of the medium lines under the Gemara, in the beginning of the line, the Bochanes le kol masniyasa, koloimer, afapi, Rebbe told his Talmidim, Sha'ani hu hasoisim ha-Mishnah. I compiled the Mishnah. Mikol Makoim, nevertheless, Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba had a foundational function. Mosarti lo ha'havchana shel kol ha-Mishnah. He was the one in charge of looking through every single Mishnah. Shuhu yavchin l'sader oisen ala seder. And where did the Pnei Moshe get the seder? I don't know. From some other place. But for sure, from our Gemara, it's not about the seder, it's about the nusach. Okay? So they did that. Nafkun v'sha'adun. They went out of the Beis Medrash of Rabbi, they went into the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba, and Amar Loin, and he told them the way we have it is b'diuk, that Kadmaya, the first Mishnayasin, which are 3, Dafke, Kerem Revoi, the Siniyana, and the later ones are Dafke Neta Revoi. And I want to say, Balpeh, for right now, the following. Let's just focus on this Mishnah. Many times, whenever we are learning a halacha that's worried about a ganef, the Gemara will say, Otu berishei askinan. And therefore, the premise is that we are not concerned of a ganef that's going to break into your house. What am I concerned about by a kerem? Vines, they as we know, they are laid on trellises. Right? Kevin took us to a Gavaldike vineyard over here, somewhere near Lancaster, if you remember. And so now you have a more sophisticated trellises. But what happens is that the trellises go up until the fence, and the vines, they intertwine themselves on the trellis, on the fence. It's very common, dafka by kerem, that some of the grapes protrude outside the field. We're not saying that a bypasser has the right to take it. But it's a different type of ganef. In other words, this concern that the Tanakama has, that someone is going to come and take the grapes or mark the field, and Taked Ashbak says, come on, you have to be concerned about a ganef. It's not, first of all, the emes is the Tanakama also was concerned for a ganef that's going to break in. But it's nicer to speak about a kedem. The ganef is nishtas ganef because he's walking on the road. It's on the road. Maybe he thinks it's allowed, and even if he doesn't think it's allowed, he's at least not breaking in. That's why over here I use Kerem Rivoi, and there will be another logic for Mishnah number 2 and for Mishnah number 3. But the bottom line is what Rabbi Yitzchak Gruber really is saying is that in Eretz Yisrael, the laws of Rivoi is not only by a Kerem, as we just quoted in the intro and yesterday in our Hagdama, that even the most lenient opinion, which is the sheet of Rabbeinu Yoina, that holds, the sheet of the Rambam, that holds that the din of Revoi is only by Eretz Yisrael, but it's not only by Kerem. All of that is because all of them understood that whenever in the oral Torah we speak about the din of the fruit of the 4th year, we don't limit it to a Kerem. When you have a Mishnah that says Kerem, there's a reason for that, as we just explained by our Mishnah. Now, says the Gemara, now that we mentioned the function, the place of Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba, that Rav Ze'era, Mikabel L'Sovayom, Mikabel, was not he was Mikabel. Mikabel means he criticized to the elders, the Hava B'Yoimai, that lived during the life of Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba, to Loi Bachanun Kol Masniyosaminei. In other words, his role was so important that he criticized, you were alive when he was alive, and why didn't you go over to him? In other words, the way would be, everyone knew all of the Mishnayos by heart, to go in front of Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba, to ask, to say all of the Mishnayos, because if you would make any mistake, whether in the Seder, whether in the Nusach, he would correct you. I think it's called proof texting. What do they do today? Now that things are written. That's what you need to have 2 people for that, just to know. It's not, it takes for Olam Vod. So one person who has the authentic Nusach reads, looks, you have the copy, you read, he's looking, and you make sure you fact check whether you're saying it right or not. And people did not appreciate the greatness of Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba as they should have, and that was the critique of Rab Ze'era. Okay, so Bekitzer, the Mishnah said that the Mishnah spoke about making a tzion, a marker, a siman, on 3, on a kerem rivoi, on a field of orla, and on kvaros. But the item that's used to mark, the Mishnah gave different items. By the field of rivoi, the Mishnah says, bekoizezois adama, clods of earth. By a field of orla, the Mishnah says, becharses. By a kvaros, besid. And now the Gemara is going to quote a Braisa that will explain why does each one have a different type of marker. Tani, so we learned in the Braisa. Kerem revoi, yes, as we learned in the Mishnah, mitzayin ois bekoizezois adama. Why? Because shuhu l'shah. That's the reason. Because Revoi, from the 3 that we are mentioning, is a problem for the least amount of time. Revoi is only in the halachic 4th year. Arlas for 3 years. A kever is until Tchias HaMesim. So since clouds of earth, they are on one hand, they are the easiest to put out, but they last the least. Perfect, that fits for Kerem Rivoi. Sher Orla, the reason why the Mishnah says you got to put the charses, we're not saying we're white shards, that's because because it lasts longer than Koizos Adama. Be'erech, it's going to last for 3 years. After 3 seasons, with the rain, with the snow, with the wind, with the heat, it's going to dissolve. Perfect, that's all we need it for. Daf Mem Vav. Shal Kavaros, why by Kavaros do we have to put Besid, lime, and we'll see Dafka, they mixed it with water to make it white, for you to see it, is it do Yoiser Mikan, because it has to last longer. And by the way, for the record, many times at some period, they would have to redo it. The reason, we'll get to it today, the reason why today we put a stone is if you can afford it. If stones today are not so cheap, you make a matzeva. but that it's going to last a lot longer. Okay. Says the Gemara. What happens if you have a field, you have a kedem, but it's not that the entire kedem is rivoi. You have many vines were planted a year or two earlier than these. These individualized vines are rivoi. To say that you should demark the whole field because of the Sodoma is inaccurate. It's not true. By the way, you would think, so what? If you're worried about a ganef, but it's not true because Elokula Alma, it's also for the year of Shvius. In the year of Shvius, everyone is allowed to take. If you're going to mark the whole field that it's Revoy when it's not, then you're violating Shvius. You have to be mafkir to your field. Right? Otherwise, you can put a sign in your house, beware of dog, even if there's no dog, because let the ganef think there's a dog. But here, Elokula Alma, it's also for Shvius. So says the Tani, we learned that if the issue are singular vines, don't mark the field because it's a Sadama, but you have to mark those vines. So he gave you a simon for those vines. That handles of jugs, obviously broken handles of jugs that are very light. You hang such a handle on each individual vine, and everyone knew this is a simon. So a person who went by a kedem, let's go by Shavis, or Latanakama Ganif. But if he sees the handle of a jug on the vine, that was a simon that it's Revoi. Rabbi Zeda wants to understand why did we need to have a Braisa that gives a reason that this lasts least and this is longer and that's even longer. Lama lane nan omrim kodech ve'echalufi mashuhu. Why couldn't the approach be to understand the Mishnah? There are three different Isurim, right? One is called Revoi, one is called Arla, one is Tuma. How can you put the same marker for each one? In other words, why do you have to give? Because the Lefisha, why do you have to start to justify it's longer, it's shorter? Of course, every Isur needs to have a different siman, right? If you're going to use the same siman for all of the three, then you would not know which one is which. And it gives an example. We're going to have a brayse that's going to tell you about many other simanim that Eden left on different items as a way of notifying what the issue is. For example, if you have a tree that you consecrated lebedek habayis, ilan shel hegdish. Now, what was the concern? Same concern. Yeah, I know that I'm not allowed to steal from your tree, but I'll tell you something. Can I lean on your tree? Can I derive benefit from your tree? Why not? If it's a hot day and I'm walking by your tree and I can sit in the shade. If it belongs to hegdish, I can't have hana from it. But how would I know it's hegdish? So ilan shel hegdish soikren oisoi besikra. They would paint it with red. We're going to get to what we spoke out in the Bavli, that when a tree was sickly, they would paint it with red as a sign that it's sick for people to daven for the tree to get better. When a person is wearing a roita bendel, when a person is wearing, this is to measure your sleep, don't ask. But when you have the roita bendlach, it's for you to daven for that person to have a refuah shalema. That's why they put it, that people should know that they're sick. But here, and the Gemara is going to ask that. Is it that you're sick or is it that you're hegdish? They think because they're holy. We know that they're sick. But we'll come back, we'll get back to that. So in other words, now, Bati Avodah Zarah, a house of Avodah Zarah. So another way, you can't sit in the shade, you can't use it as a simon, or you go to that street where there's a church and you make a right turn. Not allowed to do that. But how would people know? Today, the Goyim put up a big Salem, it's a house of Avodah Zarah. But other homes without the Salem, they would blacken some of the walls with coals. Meaning because since you have to burn it down, so they would make a simon that this is a house that has to be burnt. Bayis menuga, a house that is afflicted with soras, noisten olav efer mikla. They would put the ashes on it. Also, ashes that wataviv has to be burnt down. Now, 1 second. Why didn't you put coals on that house? Why didn't you put efer mikla on the house of Avodah Zarah? They both represent that has to be burnt. The answer is, we want to have for each item a certain simon. Like this, you learn the Braisa, and you should know which one is which. If they would put ashes on both, you wouldn't know. Is it a house of Tzoras? Is it a house of Avodah Zarah? If they would put coals on both, you wouldn't know which one is which. It's only rational for every different issue, put a different simon. If you have a Mokim Harug, if you have Mokim Harug, means if someone is found, Rahman al-Islam, murdered outside a city, I want to add that. Outside of, so the whole din, the end of Parshas Shoiftim. So one of the things is that the corpse is koine mekoimai, which means that he gets buried right where he's found. The goyim took it from us. When you go on the highways and you see on the highway, you see a place with the flowers, with the brachas. In other words, there's something about this. Here was where someone was found murdered. And you make a siman. They would take dam, doesn't mean human blood. They would take animal blood and they would mark it on that location for everyone to know that someone got killed here. Then you make a different type of siman. Mokoim egla rufa, which is connected to this, but you go to a nachalesa, machlekes rishonim, what that means. But let's go, you go to an untilled valley and you decapitate a egla. And that is a place that may never in the future be planted. That has to be left fallow forever. So how do you make a siman that this is the place where they decapitated the egla? You make a fence of stones. Point is, the Gemara is presenting this as a kasha, but really, it's a kasha that we can resolve. The Gemara is showing over here from this Braisa that when you have different items, each one carrying a different issue, you will never use the same siman for all. Makes sense. Now, hold on. That explains why we have to have for our three items as Revoi, Orla, Kevaris. Koizazois Adama, Charsis, and Sid. Why we have to have three types is because there are three different issues. But still, the question is, why for the Revoi, Koizazois Adama? Why not for the Revoi, you Sid? For that, the Braisa answers because the one that is going to be the problem that's going to dissolve the quickest should get the quickest marker, the marker that will dissolve quickest. All what the Gemara is pointing out is that even without the Lefisha, even if they all would have lasted the same amount of time, you still would need to have three different siman. Okay. Now that we brought in the Braisa that said that the siman that a yid makes when you have a tree that's hegdish, that you paint it with red, when Mashiach is coming, parenthetically, because of technology, today you can put up a little plaque made out of tin, and you can tie it to the tree, and you can write on it hegdish. They didn't have it then. That would be even better for people that don't know the Braisa. Here it's only for the people that know the Braisa. But says the Gemara, why are you telling me that painting a tree with red will indicate that this tree belongs to Hegdish? Why? We had another Braisa that we just quoted. V'chash loimar, let us be concerned that people are going to make a mistake. Shema ilan shumanabel peiroisafu. When a tree is shedding its fruit prematurely, what we did is that we painted the tree red, like we mentioned, for people to daven for the tree to have a refuah. Did we not learn in the Braisa? So when you find sikra on a tree, now we have a problem. It's the same siman for two different issues. Does it mean it's hegdish? Does it mean it's a menabel peiroisav? And by the way, there's another way of dealing with a tree that's menabel peiroisav. One is begashmias, one is beruchnias. Beruchnias is put to red for people to daven. Davening is a refuah ruchni. Or the Braisa says umatin and oisavonim, that you load it up with stones. The reason why many trees they shed their fruit early is because they have too much energy. So they're developing too quick. So you give the tree more work. It's like a kid is misbehaving, has too much energy, the class is boring. Don't tell the kid to be quiet, give the kid more work. That you burden it with stones in order it traumatizes the tree, it overworks the tree, diavad, so it will produce the fruits without using all of its energy to make the fruits too quickly. So either bekitzer, you have an option. Either you can deal with it beruchnias or you can deal with it begashmias. So the kasha is, what does red sikra on a tree mean? Here it means two different things. So the Gemara gives three answers. Answer number one is Taman dolayater peiroi, that when a tree has already fruit on it. You're right. If there is red paint on the tree, it's a siman that this tree's fruit is shedding too quickly, and you want people to daven for it. But when the Braisa said that when a tree is of hegdish, you paint it with sikra, you don't do it when there's fruit. You do it even before there's fruit. In other words, if you see fruits on it, it means that the sick is sick. The tree is sick. Daven for the tree. If you have it on the tree prior to it bearing fruit, you only do that when it's hegdish. That's one answer. No, that's going to be the next one. Bottom line is, it's from this answer, there's a deficiency, because what would you do if someone was magdish a tree that has fruit on it? Now, what are you going to do? You're going to say you're going to paint it. People will misunderstand. They're not going to know it's hegdish. So Rabbi Yoina, boy, why do you have to give such an answer, which has this problem of what would you do of hegdish with fruit? Why didn't you answer that the tree that belongs to hegdish, why did they paint it red? They painted it red. Where do you find in the Beis Hamikdash red? On the Mizbeach. On the Mizbeach, halfway up, there was a red line that was painted around it to differentiate between the damim hatachtoinim and the damim elyonim. Right, even though damim elyonim like chata should lachatchila be put on the karnos on Mizbeach, but if you didn't put it on karnos on Mizbeach, as long as you put it above the chut hasikra, you were good. Bottom line is that in the Mizbeach, which is holy, there was a chut hasikra. So in order to indicate that it's hegdish, they would paint it with a red line only. And ka'ai tanin and tamon, as we learned in the Mishnah, that chut shal sikra choygroi be'emtza lahavchem bin domim alyon domim atachtoinim. Mashe'en kain, when the tree was sick, Rabbi Mendel, they would paint the entire trunk red. You know, de facto is it's a different. One is just a bendel, and one is the whole trunk. So my whole Torah that people that wear a reita bendel, they're sick, that doesn't work. For that, they have to paint the whole arm red. They'll get there. Many reita bendlach. So that's another difference. So it's taka or it's red, but it's a different. It's a ring, or it's the whole trunk. Or the Gemara says, I'll give you a third answer. That Tani Rab Chia, Soikrin Allah b'sikra hegdish. You misunderstand. They didn't paint it stam with red paint. They used red paint and they wrote on the tree hegdish. They wrote the word hegdish. Like I said, today in technology, you would put a piece of metal hegdish. Masha Enkein, when the tree was sick, they would put aroita bendel without writing anything. So the Kitzer, they have in common that something with red, but it's different. And therefore, everyone who would learn this would know which one is which. Okay, so now that we have in our Mishnah, the machloikas between the Tanakama, who does not differentiate between Shvi'is and all other times. By Kavarais, there's no machloikas, because by a kaver, you have to put the lime paint, because like I mentioned, Kohanim are not allowed to contaminate themselves with Korb Tuma, neither may a Nazir, and even a Yisrael. If you want to go into the Beis HaMikdash, you have to be a tahar from Tumas Meis. So it's an inyan to know where is there a kaver. That's very important. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, by Kerem Rivoy and by Orla, I have to mark it for others. Others are Ganovim. And if they are Ganovim, I don't have to be concerned with the consequences of what they do. I only have to mark it in Shvi'is. That's what the Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says. The Tanakama that does not say that, Aviv, what does the Tanakama hold? That even though another person is a Ganav, that I do have to be concerned with the Ganav. It's bad enough that he's a Ganav, Dina de Mamoina, that he's stealing my money. On top of that, for him to have a Revoi, I have a duty to let him know that it's Kerem Revoi or that it's Arla. Such a similar machlokes l'chu'ura we have, as we mentioned in the intro in a Mishnah, Masechtas Peah. There we're speaking about, Masechtas Damai, that there we're speaking about a chaver who's a guest in an inn that's being run by Am Haaretz. And it wasn't uncommon. You see, bread doesn't stay fresh for a long time, but dough does stay fresh much longer. Like when we left Mitzrayim, we left with dough. Happened not to become chametz because there was a gilui alikus. So people would travel. They would travel with dough. They would come to the inn. They would give the dough to the innkeeper for the innkeeper to make for them bread. So what might be a concern that the innkeeper won't be so honest? The innkeeper might take the guest's dough, which he thinks is better than his own dough, exchange it with his dough. Okay, so first of all, you're not allowed to do that. So therefore, the Tanakama says before you give your dough to the innkeeper, if you didn't yet tithe it, make sure to tithe it. So if they're going to keep it in exchange, at least they're not going to eat untithed bread. You get it, Aviv? Says Rabbi Yossi, sounds like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. I have to take a step because the innkeeper is going to steal my dough. If he's a ganev, I don't have to be concerned with bigger consequences of his ganeva. So L'cha'oida says the Gemara, it sounds like Rabbi Yossi, in Mesechtas Demai, and our Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Amru Davar Echad. That what? Come on, that Rabbi Yossi Amar. Ein anu achroim l'ramoyim. Schwindler. You understand? Taking my dough, giving his dough. You don't have to tithe it for them. Kain, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, similar over here. Why does he say B'amed dvarim amurim b'shvis? Because during the other 6 years, I have to put a marker. What, l'ramoyim? Like Anovim, even though with Rabbi Yitzchak Ruba said Kenem because the grapes go until the edge of the field, so what? So what? If I walk by your house here in LA and you have a fig tree and it's hanging over on the sidewalk, I'm not allowed to take your figs. That's called Geneva.
In case of the Pindicus, you have to buy for yourself, maybe change the...
Okay. Almost. So says the Gemara, no, they're not connected to 100%. So Mistabra says the Gemara, I do accept that Rabbi Yossi will for sure hold like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, but only in that direction. But Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, lav dafka, he'll be moided to Rabbi Yossi. Why? Explains the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi, yoid Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that what? She'ein anu achroyim l'ramoyim. Let me tell you the big difference. The big difference is the guest, Shloima, is giving the innkeeper their dough. I know you're giving them their dough for them to bake bread. But at the end of the day, you gave them the dough. The act of thievery is not so, it doesn't, I'm not saying halachically, I'm saying not halachically. It doesn't feel that horrible. Don't forget, the innkeeper cannot get away with just not giving anything back. The innkeeper has other dough that maybe is inferior. Here you're giving him. So if Rabbi Yossi says that even when you give it to the innkeeper, you only gave it to him to bake. I'm not achroi if he's going to be a swindler, and if he's going to eat something that's untithed, that's his problem. Vadai, right? He'll be moide to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel that what? That to be worried about even a bigger ganef, that he's on his own going to take from my field, on his own. Vadai, I don't have to be achroi l'ramoyim. But in the opposite direction, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel who says, I'm not achroi to a ganef, yeah, that's a ganef to whom I gave nothing. But maybe even Rabbi Shimon will be moide that if I'm in your inn and I'm giving you my bread, I want to add what Shlomo you were saying. Forget about l'ramoyim. It should not let anything leave his possession that's not tithe. Forget about Ramoyin. Before you give your product to anyone on any conditions, there is an ethic that there's a standard of a chaver. Don't give out anything before tithing it. And the emes, my friends, it should have been tithed way back when. First says, why? Because and therefore, they're similar, but they're not the same. It doesn't go both ways. And here we start the sugya, my friends, of minayin l'tzion. In Satmer, they changed the nusach of the whole sugya over here. Minayin l'tzion. I don't know how they learned this. Shal kevaris. Minayin l'tzion. Now, 1 second. There's a big machlokes. Just tzion here means, the word tzion means a siman. The reason why Yerushalmi at HaKodesh is called tzion, stam to know, is because the siman of Hashem resting amongst the Jewish people is in Yerushalayim. The siman that people can have a complete level of Yerushalmi is in Yerushalmi. It's a sign. It means when you go there, you see whatever is there represents something even greater. Whenever the greater cannot be seen, at least you can see the siman. You see a living person is a tzion that there is a neshama. A good mashal. In other words, you can see it, but you can't see the neshama, but you see it through the siman. You get it? That's the meaning of tzion. Here, what we're saying is that when a person is interred, we're not meant to see the remains of the person. The remains of the person you don't see. But when you see, I'll call this a matzeva. What do you see with the matzeva? The matzeva is a siman that someone is buried. That's the meaning of tzion. It's a sign that someone is buried. The Mishnah speaks about a matzeva, not the way we do it now, but by applying a certain type of white lime on top of the area, or at least at the periphery. This is important what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be on top of the whole thing. And on top of that, we learned this in the Bavli. They actually did not put the tzion mamish on top. They would put it a little bit removed all around. Why would they put it removed all the way around? If it's not a stone, that means it's not protruding upwards, Aviv. So when are you going to see it? It's difficult. You're going to see it when you're standing on top of it. We want that even if you're standing exactly on the tzion, you're not yet standing on top of the kever. Standing on top of the remains will normally contaminate the person because of the tumas oil aspect. Don't forget, a corpse conveys tumam bemaga ubemasa, unique b'oil. Oil is three. Oil means the item that's conveying tumah, the item that might acquire tumah are under the same oil. Or oil means that I am the oil on top of the corpse, or that the corpse is an oil on top of me. So we're speaking here about a person not going on top of. Now, midrabanan, when you enter its daladamis, you're already tummy. But I'm going to speak about biblical tumah is when you are on top of. So just to know, putting the marker exactly on top is almost too late. Chaval. I'm not, now real estate is expensive. We're not talking about putting it a mile away. We're talking, understand that if, let's say, if the corpse, if this is the corpse, they would paint it here, right around it. So like this, if you're standing on top of it, you know not to take the next step. Whether the Gemara means minayin letziin midoraisa or midrabanan, even though we're bringing psukim, is subject to a big machlokes. There are opinions that say that marking a grave is midoraisa. And the psukim, yeah, because we'll see psukim in Chumash, psukim in Nach. Or the psukim is an asmachta, it's a derabanan, and yet we're looking for an asmachta. Two ways of learning the sugya.
Looks like it's at the head.
We put the stones today by the head, and the fact that the stones today protrude upwards, I don't know what they actually do, but I'm assuming what I said, that you put it right around this Rashi in Moed Katan in the beginning, where we learned the sugya. That's not shayach by a stone, because a stone you can see from the distance. That's why they would put a stone. First, it'll last longer. We want for people to see it in the distance. And especially now, like I mentioned, a cave is matama when you enter its daladamas. So I don't even want to go into its daladama. Having lime painted on the ground would not be enough. But that's what they needed to. Minayin, let's see. So let's start. The Berechia said in the name of Rabbi Yaakov Bar Bas Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Bas Yaakov comes up every now and then. His father, this is either the father was not Jewish or the father was unworthy. One of the two. So they didn't want to mention his father's name. So they mentioned his mother's name. Stam Lahoyer happens to hear every now and then that when you officiate a wedding and you make the ksuba, what happens if the father of one of the parties are goyim? Just to know what you do. It's in the ksuba, you write the name of the person, Ben, the father. We don't do in the ksuba the mother. Or the girl, Bas, the father. If the father is not Jewish, so then Vada, you put the son of the name of the mother, the daughter. But according to many opinions, it's lachatchila, you do by Sarah, let's say the girl, Bas, Rivka, Bas, and you write the mother's father's name. That's Yaakov Bar Bas Yaakov. They didn't write her name, but they wrote Bar Bas Yaakov. In the name of, now there's different versions. Either it was said in the name of Reb Chunya from a place called the Veras Chavron, or that Rabbi Yossi said that it's not Rabbi Yaakov bar Bas Yaakov. It was Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, said in the name of, different, not Rab Chunya, but Rab Chananya, the Baras Chavron. Or Rab Cheskia said that Rab Uziel said that what? That Berei, the Rab Chunya, the Baras Chavron, said it in the name of Rab Chunya, the Baras Chavron. Here you see how they got mixed up with all of the names. In my generation, all of the people that Taka knew everything by heart, what everyone, even the big Chachamim Aviv that knew everything by heart, when it came to the names, it was hard. I have many Chavedim that were Gavaldik, not just Shakal Latariya, they knew Gemara by heart, but the names, they would say, the names I'm not so great at. I even think I heard that Abu Shirvai saying it, relative to him, not relative to us. He knows everything by heart. He says the name sometimes he gets confused with. So here you see how it happened. Okay, anyways, that what? So one source is Pashas Tazriya, that once a person is declared to be a Mitzvah, Tame Yikra, he actually has to call out, I'm Tame. What do you see from over here? That if someone is Tame, they have to notify. Now, a corpse cannot call out, verstehst? So the way he calls out is making a tzion. Why do you need for it to call out? To tell you, Paraish, keep away. You know, the whole culture today, which is beautiful, of going to Kvarim. Just to know that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, that did not exist. Even if you're going to say that Kivrei Tzadikim are not Matamim, which is subject to a big machlokes. Some people, when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be built, we kept away from, we wanted to go to the Beis HaMikdash. People, it's not only a kohen. We were always worried about. I don't want to become tamei b'tumas meis. Rab Hila b'shem Rab Shmuel bar Nachman. He quotes a pasuk in Yecheskel, and the pasuk you can read in the Torah Oira Shalom. That's going to be that after the nations of the world will physically, the way it's written in Scripture, they're going to gather against us in the Holy Land. They're going to be nearing Yerushalmi, and we call that the war of Gog and Magog. That at some point, when all hope will be lost, that is where the biggest miracles will happen. And all of the people that are our enemies will die. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of corpses littered all over the Holy Land. And the Psukim speak about it. And I want to read the pasuk. And they're going to see Etzem Adam. And it says, Ubana Etzloit Tzion at Kavru Oisai Hamakabrim El Gei Hamoin Goig. Clearly that we're gonna.
Rabbi, וקרא שמות ציון.
Tziyun, thank you. Because that's it. Because Yakir was bothered. Tzion, we're stealing Tzion. Tzion is Tzion l'chud v'Tziyun l'chud. Okay, good.
It happened to be my bar mitzvah maftir, so
beautiful.
וקרא שמות ציון.
So let's go read. So he's gonna teach we have 3 minutes. That we're going to be walking through the Holy Land, and we're going to see Etzem Adam. I want to make a little statement that Tumas Oyel Aviv, Tumas Mago Masa is even by an Etzem. Remember, if you learn Tara and Rambam, where are we up to? We're getting there already. Almost there, right? We're learning Zroyim, then comes Avoida, Korbanos, Tara. We're back. So, but 1 second, Danny, even by bones, if you have a Roiva Hakav, in other words, even bones, I know that not any bone will impart tumas oil, which is the ikar reason for a tziyun, but it's shayach that from bones, if you have a certain amount, they can be matamot tumas oil. So even for bones, at times, or you have a shedra, you have a gulgoilis, roiv binyan. So obana etzlei tziyun mikan clearly shemitzayin atzamois. Now, we're going to go through word by word. It says, etzem Adam. Was is das Adam? Mikan, shemitzainen, even only on the shizra, which is the shidra. Or even only on al-gulgoilis. And as they say over here, that when you just see a bone, for people like us, it's difficult to know whether the bone is from an animal. An animal's bone does not impart tumas oil, whether it's from a human being. Whether every human being, Machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says that only a yid imparts tumas oil. Atem kuruim adam. But let's go with the Chachamim, because the nations that are coming to attack us will not be Yidden. And here we are concerned about tumas oil. So he's saying that even if it's only the spinal column, when you look at the spine of a corpse, you can see animal person. When you look at the skull, you can see animal person. Here also, ubana. Mikan, here we go. Shemetzainen al gabi even kavod. This is important. If I'm adding if you are putting a stone which is what we do, first of all, they would paint the stone in white, but only do that if the stone is affixed in the ground. Why? Because if they're still going to put a stone, there's a minhag now, right after a kavura, you know what we do? That we put 5 stones on the place of the head. You take stones from that location, little stones, but those stones are not fixed. Now, if you would paint that with lime, what might happen? The wind, another person will take the stone, put it over there, and then everyone is going to think that over there is a place where there's tumas meis. We don't want to do that either. We don't want for people to think they're tummy when they're not. So if you're going to use a stone and paint it with lime, first affix the stone into the ground for no one to move it. Because if you would allow yourself to paint it on a stone that's not affixed, which we don't want to do. Then etzloi is another word, right? Ubana etzloi. What's etzloi? Etzloi, what we call it from Rashi. Etzloi means you don't mark the lime on it. You mark it near it, right? For there to be a advanced warning, just one word in Daf Mem Zayin will stop. Tziyun, mikan, litziyun. That's the answer. So we have a pasuk from Tazria, and now we have a pasuk from Yechezkel.
All right, when did the blue paint start?
The blue paint, I don't know when it started, but I mentioned blue paint is to keep away the demonic forces. Could be in the earlier years.
Fasting, right?
Well, not only tzvas, but could be in the earlier years.